My name is Jeannie Regan-Dinius, and I am the Director of Special Initiatives for the Indiana Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology, and I'm a member of the Preserving Historic Places Preservation Conferences Planning Committee. So we want to welcome you to our series of virtual conference sessions that will hopefully lead up to the in-person conference in South Bend, September 28th through October 1st of 2021. So hopefully this time next year, we'll all be roaming around downtown South Bend looking for good places to eat. I want to welcome all the Hoosiers who usually attend the conference in person. We'll see you guys next year. For those new hopefully this will give you some in-person conference. And we'll year. Jessica Kramer and Suzanne Stannis, both from Indiana Landmarks, and they do all the behind the scenes stuff for this, so I really appreciate their help and everything they do to help me out. And then the conference and our virtual sessions are not possible without the generous support of our partners, and so bear with me for a minute as I go through the different sponsors that we have. We've got the Indiana Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology, Indiana Landmarks, Indiana University, St. Joseph County Commissioners, RC Engineering, the City of South Bend, the Cornelius O'Brien Lecture Series, the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, Marvin Windows, the National Park Service, Wish-Janie Elsner and Associates, Visit South Bend and Mishawaka, Burlung, Cultural Resources Analysis, Historic Preservation and Heritage Consulting, the Indiana Archaeology Council, Old National Bank, Ratio Architects, and RE Diamond Associates. So whether in your office or on your couch, and whether you're, if you just give a little clap to thank them for all the work that they do, and it makes it possible for these to even be free for you. Please save the date for our next one, which is Thursday, October 29th. For the session. Now this one's a little different. It's in the evening. It's not at lunchtime, so please remember that. But it is the Century of Progress Homes tour. So if you've never seen a Century of Progress home, just wait for these spectacular pieces up in northern Indiana on Lake Michigan, and we'll be able to get some tours and get to see some of those exciting places. So more information to come on that and registration links. Now we are using the webinar version of Zoom today. So all of your microphones are muted and your video is hidden. So continue to eat your lunch. Please submit your questions in the Q&A features, not the chat room, because that's what I'm going to be monitoring to give Jackie questions for as time allows. The session is being recorded and will be available shortly. The previous session, so whether you're interested in the COVID and community whatever Steve Zade talked about, the code enforcement, whether that or with preservation action, all of those are available on Indiana Landmarks' website, and you can see the previous ones that we had. So now on to our speaker, Jackie Swihart. She earned her bachelor's in secondary education at Indiana University South Bend in 2014 and taught social studies before earning her master's in public history at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis in 2019. Jackie, aren't you glad you're not teaching right now? Say that. As a graduate student, Jackie completed her graduate public history internships with Indiana Humanities, where she guided the creation of the Indiana Women's Suffrage Centennial, and which has been a spectacular piece this entire year of celebrating women's right to vote. And she worked on projects emphasizing local history. She was selected as a member of IUPUI's Elite 50 graduate and professional students. Currently, Jackie works in the Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs as the Indiana Main Street Coordinator and the Historic Renovation Grant Program Manager. So Jackie, I will turn that over to you.
Thank you, Jeannie. I will share my screen and get my slides up. All right, hopefully we are good to go. Well, I just wanted to first and foremost say hello, everybody. I am really excited to be here today to discuss what's going on with us over at Indiana Main Street. Just kind of a fun story to start with. The Statewide Preservation Conference is actually what initially got me interested in topics like historic preservation and placemaking and public history. I had originally thought I was just going to continue to teach. but this really kind of changed my trajectory. So it feels a little bit like full circle being back and talking with this audience today. But I am just really excited to be here. I wanted to say thank you to DHPA and Indiana Landmarks and everybody who's behind this event for thinking to include me. So as far as an agenda, there we go. Here's what I had in mind for today. We'll start with just a high level of OCRA and what the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, what we do. We'll talk a bit about National Main Street Center and how the Indiana Main Street program fits into OCRA's mission and vision. Then we'll take a deeper look at Indiana Main Street, what's been going on in the past couple of years, as well as a general direction of where the program is headed. Then we'll pivot the discussion to look at how Indiana Main Street has responded to the COVID-19 crisis, as well as highlight some additional programming that we have going on that we're super excited to talk about. Then, of course, if there's time at the end, I am more than happy to answer any questions. So for those who are maybe unfamiliar with our office, we are housed within the Lieutenant Governor's family of business. We are under the leadership of Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. And our vision is really to work with Indiana communities to build relevant and economically thriving places where people want to live, grow, work, and play. And we accomplish that vision by working with local, state, and national partners to provide resources and technical assistance to really help communities in shaping and achieving their vision for community and economic development. So if you're not familiar with Indiana Main Street as a program, you may be familiar with some of our other programs. Within our agency, we house the Community Development Block Grants, the Stellar Communities Program, Quick Impact Place-Based Grant Program, our Next Level Connections Broadband Program, the Historic Renovation Grant Program, and many other things. But all these programs together, they really just combine financial resources and capacity building support through providing direct technical assistance. So OCRA has 6 community liaisons located throughout the state, and I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that they are out there and willing and ready to assist you if needed. So each community liaison, they live and work within their region, and you can really think of them as your front door to government. They're here to help you on any OCRA related programming, not just Indiana Main Street, but they're also there to help connect you with partners and other state agencies as needed. So you can always find this on our website, but I just wanted to highlight our community liaisons here. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is one program in particular, the Indiana Main Street program. And because I'm a former teacher, I learned to never assume that people in the room, or in this case, the virtual room, know what something is. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking at a high level about what the Indiana Main Street program is. So what is it? We are a coordinating program of the National Main Street Center. So we are part of a larger organization, which I'll touch on here in a second. But the program really encourages economic development and revitalization of downtown areas within the state. It emphasizes preservation and development of traditional downtown resources and assets. And it provides support for the implementation of local strategies in order to stimulate long-term growth, as well as pride in the heart of communities and their downtown cores. Indiana Main Street as a program currently has 2 program managers who oversee the program. That's a picture of me on the left. I act as the coordinator for Indiana Main Street, but my colleague Abby Chapman, she serves as the manager of outreach and organization. And we're really excited because this program hasn't always had 2 managers, but the agency brought Abby on in January of this year because we really saw the need for additional capacity for the program. And also, you know, because of the Lieutenant Governor, she's such a strong supporter of the Main Street program and our downtown communities in the state. We're able to grow our team and provide even more time and resources to our participating communities. So we're really excited to grow our team. I mentioned earlier that Indiana Main Street is a coordinating program of the National Main Street Center, and I just wanted to give you a little bit more background and context for who they are. So National Main Street Center was developed in the late 1970s to help communities revitalize their downtown areas. And it originally started as a program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. It then launched as an independent subsidiary of the National Trust in 2013. And then in 2015, they rebranded as Main Street America. So you may recognize them by either Main Street America or the National Main Street Center. But one thing we kind of like to brag about in Indiana is that Madison, Indiana was actually one of 3 communities in the entire nation to participate as a pilot program when they first put this concept together. So we kind of like to brag and say that Indiana has had its roots in the National Main Street Center since its inception. But then in 1985, legislation was passed to establish the Indiana Main Street Program as a coordinating program. And it's been within the umbrella of OCRA since the 2000s. So I really wanted to also talk about the framework that Main Street America provides. It really is a framework that is at the heart of this program, and it's at the heart of all the local Main Street activities. And really what that is, we call it the Main Street approach. It offers community-based revitalization initiatives with a practical, adaptable framework for downtown transformation. And the best thing about it is that it can be easily tailored to local conditions. But the Main Street approach, it really begins with creating a vision for success that is rooted in a solid understanding of the market realities of the district, and that is also informed by broad community engagement. So at a high level, that's what the Main Street approach is trying to do. Here's a visual representation of that framework, and the framework itself focuses on 4 points, and you can see them here. We have economic vitality, design, organization, and promotion. Work plans at the local level are typically arranged around these 4 points, and I'll show you here in a second, but typically it's volunteer committees who execute the work. But when it comes to economic vitality, we're looking at building a diverse economic base, catalyzing smart new investment, cultivating a strong entrepreneurship ecosystem. With design, we're really looking at how can we create an inviting, inclusive atmosphere in the downtown? How can we celebrate historic character and foster people-centered public spaces? We also look at organization and think about how can we build leadership and strong organizational capacity at the local level and ensure broad community engagement, as well as forge partnerships across different sectors. And then the 4th point, promotion, that's really looking at the market district's defining assets, communicating unique features through storytelling, and supporting buy local experiences. So this is really the framework that all Main Street programs rely on and that their work plans revolve around. But in terms of executing the work, I just wanted to touch briefly on a typical organizational structure. And this is what it typically looks like, although it doesn't have to. Most of our designated programs are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. There are others who are housed within other organizations like a chamber or an EDC. But even if they are embedded within another organization, we really recommend that all programs have a distinct organization and governing body and have a board of directors that exclusively oversees the Main Street program. But you can kind of see how a typical Main Street is set up. You have organization stakeholders at the top. Those are the people who are defining needs, the investment, they're providing that, the program funding, as well as ongoing feedback. And then you typically have a board of directors who oversees financial management, advocacy, policy, planning, personnel. And then not all of our programs have an executive director or additional staff, but some do. All of our nationally accredited communities are required to have a paid staff person. But for those who do, that person is the facilitator. They are working on implementation, coordination, and communication. And then from there, you can kind of see typically Main Street organizations have 4 committees that, again, revolve around these 4 points, although it doesn't have to be this way. You might have 2 committees and you might overlap some of these points. It's really meant to be a holistic approach. Sometimes I find it easier to explain the Main Street program by providing counterexamples. So I listed a few common misconceptions about the Main Street program here. First off, we always like to clarify that Main Street programs are not just party planners. Events are really important, and especially when it comes to the Main Street framework. However, Main Street organizations, they are economic development organizations, and they have the potential and the opportunity to do a lot more than just event planning. Another common misconception is that the Indiana Main Street program is a grant program. It is not a grant program. It's intended to be a long-term, community-driven volunteer program. And yes, you know, as a coordinating program, we do offer grants sometimes that are exclusive to Main Street organizations. But something that we've seen in the past is, you know, a group might get together because they're interested in a grant opportunity, and then the program itself fizzles out. And that's what we're really trying to avoid. We want this, again, to be long-term, community-driven, have buy-in from volunteers that's going to be sustainable. And then the last one I have on here, you know, Main Street programs are not the same as an EDC or a chamber. Even if they are embedded within these organizations, it's really important to promote that they find ways to complement each other's missions and visions and the work that everybody's doing, but they are not the same thing, and there's room for everybody to work together collaboratively. So at the end of the day, you know, sometimes the Main Street program is something you don't quite fully grasp until you see it in action. It can look like a lot of different things depending on what community you're in. But, you know, we fully believe that Main Streets make a place, and that placemaking is economic development. And these two testimonials reflect this line of thinking. And it's just something I wanted to share with you as a takeaway before moving on. So, you know, we believe Main Street makes a place. And this quote says, "The place is becoming more important than the product." We also believe, like I said, placemaking is economic development. And the quote says, "Economic development is really the result of creating places where people want to be." So we fully believe that the Main Street program emphasizes both of these points through the work that the national, state, and local programs do every day. And for those of you who maybe prefer quantitative data, here's a snapshot of our statewide impact for 2019. We had over 7,000 volunteers, over 158,000 volunteer hours, over 2,000 net jobs were created, and for every community with a Main Street program, there's an average of $5.5 million in public and private investment in the downtown. So this really makes Main Street one of the most successful economic development strategies in America. Now that you have a general understanding of what the Main Street program is, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what we've been up to over the past year or two and just give you an idea of where we're going. So I'm going to take a drink of water. So I really wanted to highlight that, and some of you may know this, especially if any of you are Main Streeters joining us today, you're well aware that OCRA suspended Indiana Main Street applications, and really that was in order to evaluate the scope of its program. During that time, Indiana Main Street and OCRA consulted with Main Street America, again, that umbrella organization we fall under. We also consulted with the Indiana Main Street Council, as well as OCRA staff, to determine next steps. And after all of this meetings and talking about the future of the program, it did lead to the creation of a new program structure, as well as a new definition of what historic preservation ethic is as it relates to the Main Street program. And while we're not quite ready to premiere the new program structure itself, I can share with you our new definition of what it means for a designated Main Street program to possess historic preservation ethic. So before that, I just wanted to say the reason we evaluate historic preservation ethic as part of the program is because as a coordinating program, we use Main Street America's 10 standards of performance to designate and evaluate Main Street programs. And as you see highlighted in yellow, Standard 4 is currently regarding historic preservation. So the standard provided by Main Street America really gives us guidance on what it means to have historic preservation ethic. And this is how they kind of describe it in their standards. They say historic preservation is central to the Main Street program's purpose and is what makes historic and traditional commercial districts authentic places. Historic preservation involves saving, rehabilitating, and finding new uses for existing buildings, as well as intensifying the uses of the existing buildings through building improvement projects and policy and regulatory changes that make it easier to develop property within the commercial district. But you know, this implies that every community has historic buildings to save and rehab. And since the Main Street approach encompasses more than just historic preservation, we really wanted to ensure that no downtown community was excluded from the program solely based on a lack of historic properties that they have or don't have downtown. And that's because we know that there can be heritage and history in a community, even if there aren't buildings left to show it. So whether that's due to natural disaster like a tornado or maybe a fire, or maybe just mismanagement of ownership and local leadership that led to the removal of these buildings, there's still history within that community that we can honor and preserve in other ways. So that's why we work to broaden our definition of historic preservation for this program. The intent behind this change was to be more inclusive of local conditions and experiences, and to also recognize that community history can include other metrics in addition to preservation of buildings, such as storytelling. So the definition we came up with is sort of a three-parter. So the first part is your very typical definition of what is historic. So we say a commercial district whose majority of architecture is at least 50 years old, maintains historic integrity and historic fabric, and is significant in American history and/or architecture at either the state, national, or local level. Or what we've added here is that it could be a commercial district that includes cultural history as part of their preservation ethic and emphasizes authentic stories of place. Or, and here's the third part of the three-parter, it could be a combination of the two definitions. So, like I said, the definition itself that we came up with was pulled from various definitions, including from the National Trust and the soon-to-come updated standards from Main Street America. This definition, it was reviewed and tweaked and voted on by our Indiana Main Street Council, and we also had a lot of other feedback from internal and external stakeholders as well. Now, I also mentioned that we have changes coming to our program structure. And again, while we're not in a position to necessarily go into the details about what those specific changes will be, I'd really like to talk through why we're gravitating toward these structural changes to our program. So I have a few different things here, and I'll walk you through them here briefly. But first and foremost, Main Street America has really been working on improvements to encourage higher standards for both local Main Street communities as well as coordinating programs. So it's upping the bar, raising the standards. And these changes for Main Street America, they've really motivated Indiana Main Street and OCRA more broadly to rethink our role and responsibility as a partner to Main Street America, as well as our role and responsibility as a partner to the local programs. We believe that implementing this new structure will help OCRA staff better serve and support our local Main Street communities, especially those who are very actively working the Main Street approach, but also to help us cultivate capacity building for communities who are really eager to grow as an organization. These changes are also influenced by new accreditation standards that will be released sometime in 2020 that outline the foundational elements necessary to build successful and sustainable revitalization efforts. Again, those are going to be coming from Main Street America, and they also identify new baseline requirements to qualify for National Main Street accreditation. So, something we felt and heard time and time again is to really prioritize quality over quantity in our program. So I just wanted to note that we currently have 128 programs in our coordinating program. So that means 128 different communities around the state are designated as an Indiana Main Street community. Most other coordinating programs in the country, on average, I would say have somewhere between maybe 20 and 50 designated programs. So point there being is we have a lot, definitely above average. And Main Street America, just for context, they recommend that a coordinating program have one staff person at the coordinating level for every 10 programs at the local level. So one person at the coordinating level for 10 local programs. We have basically 1.5 staff people at the coordinating level for 128 programs. So we really want to focus our efforts in a very intentional way, and we want to be better partners, like I said, to our local Main Street programs as well as to the national program. And so we really just hope that these changes will catalyze a stronger partnership by really providing higher quality support, higher quality guidance to both individuals at the local level as well as organizations as a whole at the local level. Just a note on the implementation of these changes. As we kind of go through this process, we will definitely take into consideration community interest in the program. And by that, I mean the community interest of those who are already designated as part of the program. We're also working very closely with the National Main Street Center to implement these changes. I'll mention this here in a couple minutes, but we have a contract, it's a 2-year contract with the National Main Street Center, and the majority of that contract is to provide trainings and education and resources to our local programs. But a chunk of that contract is actually going toward their support and assistance to the coordinating level to help implement a lot of these changes. I know you probably want to know more now, especially if you're joining me as a Main Street organization or representative of your organization, but save the date, November 9th, we will release our formal announcement of these changes. So stay tuned. I think we did just send out a save the date yesterday, but we are really excited about this programmatic change. I also wanted to just give a quick note on our program accepting new applicants. We are also planning to reopen applications on November 9th. As in the past, a city or a town can apply to be a designated Main Street organization, but what's new now is individual neighborhoods can also apply. So if you're maybe in a more urban area and you have a very specific neighborhood within that community, that neighborhood could apply as well. We're planning on the deadline for applications to be at the end of February of 2021. So that's another change from the past. Instead of accepting applications on a rolling basis, we're going to have a window annually, and applications will be accepted during that probably 3-month window. If you're interested in working toward becoming a designated Main Street organization, I highly recommend that you contact your OCRA community liaison first, not only to just prepare the application, but to just really talk through Main Street at a deeper level, since we only have a limited amount of time here together today. We also have an Indiana Main Street program guide and handbook. You can find a digital copy of that on our OCRA website. And what I recommend the most in that handbook, if you're interested in the program, is looking at page 16. It's called A Checklist for Starting a Main Street Program, which makes it sound a lot easier than it actually is, but it is a wonderful guide if you're just like, I have no idea where to start or how to start. I recommend checking out that checklist and using it as a guide. So just in summary, before we kind of pivot and change subjects real quick, I just wanted to again emphasize that these programmatic changes, as well as the new definition of historic preservation ethic, we really hope that these changes are going to cater toward local conditions and capacity more than they have in the past. We've been planning and evaluating throughout 2019. This process began before I even came into my position, which was just about a year ago now. So this has been a lot of time for OCRA to reflect and make informed decisions about next steps. And then implementation will occur from 2020 into 2021. And again, like I said, new applications will open November 9th in 2020 as well.
Jackie, we got a question that's actually, if you go back one.
Yeah.
That's relevant. The question is, will the applications that are going to open up here in November, is it a first come, first serve? Do you have a number of spots that you're going to fill, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is not first come, first serve. One thing that will be different from the past is it will be a competitive process. In the past, we didn't have a scoring committee that I'm aware of, and so this coming year and in the future, we're going to really lean on and look at our Indiana Main Street Council to help us with some of these evaluations. And so actually November 9th as well, we'll release a recorded webinar on the application process. And so in that webinar, we will walk you through how to prepare for the application, what we're looking for, how applications will be evaluated, how they will be scored. So if you are interested in that, I highly recommend, again, connecting with your community liaison, saving the date for that webinar on November 9th. But it will not be first come, first serve. It'll probably, we don't have a set number that we're limiting into the program, but because it is a little bit more competitive than it has been in the past, we don't suspect that a huge number of programs will be joining this year. But again, communities can reapply every year, and we will work very closely with them to get them where they want to be and help them grow and be eligible for designation.
Do any of the Main Streets lose their current designation or have to reapply under the new program?
We're still kind of figuring some of the logistics out in that regard, so I can't really speak to that at this time. So I would just say hold tight for November 9th, and we can pick up that conversation a bit more then. Any other questions?
You may continue.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to pivot and change topics a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact it's had on us as a coordinating program, as well as highlight some of the efforts that have been going on at the local level. But before that, I wanted to highlight an article that Indiana Landmarks actually published looking at the impacts of COVID-19 on our local Main Street communities. We really appreciate this opportunity to highlight some of the work that our local Main Street programs have been doing, considering everything going on. So I thought I would just highlight some of their work here. So in Madison, Madison Main Street, they worked with the Community Foundation of Madison and Jefferson County to offer grants reimbursing up to half of a business's rent or mortgage costs during May. They also were really creative and pivoted their Fourth Friday event to a virtual format. And so what they did was they featured videos of small business owners showcasing their businesses, providing contact information so viewers could follow up for purchases or gift cards there as well. And so this is pretty early on, and I remember the executive director was like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I think it went really well. I think it's very successful for them. And it was a creative pivot given everything going on. In Shelbyville, Shelbyville Main Street partnered with the Blue River Community Foundation and Shelby County Development Corporation to pay local attorneys to help small businesses as they were applying for disaster relief loans or paycheck protection. They also deployed, again, this is another fun thing that I really liked. They deployed downtown dollars for every $25 spent on local gift cards. The program would provide $10 in downtown dollars to spend at local shops throughout the month of September. And then in Lawrenceburg, Lawrenceburg Main Street, they partnered with the city to award more than $270,000 in emergency grants to small businesses. And they also offered virtual tours that showcased local shops on their social media accounts. In Evansville, downtown Evansville provided travel-sized bottles of hand sanitizer with every $25 that were spent at local businesses. They created a virtual tip jar to provide relief for service industry workers. They posted uplifting stories on their blog, which is called The Heart of Downtown Evansville. And that was really in an effort to introduce readers to their businesses downtown. And then in Jeffersonville, they launched an online crowdfunding campaign raising over $15,000 for grants to local businesses. And they also hired a local artist, Cortland Waters Bartley, to create this inspiring chalk art that you see in the pictures. They just had inspiring message on the sidewalks in front of different downtown businesses, just trying to spread a little cheer in the downtown area. So I just wanted to quickly highlight some of the work that's happening at the local level. There's been a lot more going on. Again, we have 128 communities, so there's been a really huge impact. And we're just really proud of the work that they're doing. But that's just to highlight a few. Even though the Main Street programs at the local level, they did immediately dive into action. They started coordinating creative ways to pivot through this crisis and support small businesses. We at the coordinating level also recognized that we needed to provide additional support to our local programs. So early in the pandemic in March, we were fortunate to have Main Street America conduct an online survey, and the online survey was pushed to local Main Street programs and then pushed out to their small businesses to capture the impact that the pandemic has had on small businesses. And the findings from the survey really helped us at a statewide level better understand what was happening at the local level and really helped to inform our next steps. So the survey was conducted between March 25th and April 6th, and almost 6,000 small business owners responded nationally. And just some of the national findings, the survey indicated that millions of small businesses were at risk of closing permanently if the crisis were to continue for several months. It showed that there had been a devastating impact on small business revenue. Approximately 35 million Americans employed by small businesses appeared to be at risk of unemployment at the time this was taken. It also showed that business owners, primarily what they needed was financial assistance and penalty-free extensions on expenses. And it made the recommendation that states and cities really needed to invest in small business education and technical support programs rather than pulling back spending on these programs. The great thing about this survey, though, was that it also really highlighted statewide data as well. So in Indiana, we had 438 responses to this survey, which was actually the second, or maybe the third, but I think is the second highest response rate out of all of the participating states. And some of those statewide key findings are here. And I won't go over all of them, but just to highlight a few. 70% said that their businesses did not have an online sales component. 82% said that their businesses suspended storefront operations as a result of COVID. 87% reported loss of revenue. 56% reported their revenue decreased by more than 75%. So this kind of just captures, you know, the impact in our particular state. And then in May, Main Street America, they conducted a follow-up survey to better understand the continued challenges that businesses were facing as this crisis evolved. And some of those follow-up findings are here. Less than half of respondents who applied for federal relief dollars in the initial stimulus round received funding, and the smallest businesses had the least success with their applications. I also found that funding from PPP and the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan offered little long-term financial relief. More than a third of businesses earned no revenue in April and laid off or furloughed their entire staff. Personal care businesses were hit especially hard. One good thing that they found was that local Main Street programs played a critical role in supporting small businesses across America. And just some other things, business owners, they found were most interested in technical assistance focused on operating their business safely. And again, another positive note, communities are working together and supporting small businesses through the crisis. So all of that is to say is that this survey, along with a lot of other data sets, really informed our response as an organization. And before I kind of dive into what the Indiana Main Street response was, I did want to highlight that our agency, we did pivot our CDBG funding toward a COVID-19 response program. So you can read a little bit more about this here, or I just encourage you to go to our website. But so far we have had 2 phases of this program, and in large part, a lot of this funding is going to help small businesses and helping them to retain low to moderate jobs, and these can be grants or loans. So I just wanted to say that, you know, these projects related to grants and loans to small businesses, they could receive funds related to working capital, to continuing operations, or maybe even to support remote work. So with that data from Main Street America, as well as the initiatives by the CDBG team to support small businesses financially, we were able to then kind of strategically inform our next steps with Indiana Main Street. Our first response was really to make sure that our Main Street programs had the opportunity to learn. And so I mentioned earlier, we're under contract with the National Main Street Center. And really our biggest goal with that contract is to provide trainings and education that are targeted at 4 stakeholder groups. So we're looking at the Main Street communities with executive directors, either full-time or part-time staff. We're looking at communities with volunteer-driven programs, board members, and communities who have had what we call transformation strategy visits in the past, which I'll touch on here in a second. But some of the training topics that we've already hit on, early on we did a training on trends in the COVID-19 recovery that will shape Main Street. We've been focusing on 4-point training webinars. So those 4 points we went over earlier: design, organization. We've taken deep dives into those and thought about how we can pivot in wake of COVID-19 and align our activities with what's happening now. We've offered trainings on leadership development, and actually next week, we're gonna have statewide workshops on transformation strategies. And just for context, really a transformation strategy, it articulates a focused, deliberate path to revitalizing or strengthening a downtown district. And it should be organized around those 4 points that we mentioned earlier, but it also needs to be really informed by local and regional market data, as well as community engagement. Another response that we had as a coordinating program was the Taking Care of Main Street grant. This grant provided support for the ongoing activities and functions of our Main Street programs. Grants of $5,000 were awarded to 40 different Main Street programs. And the goal is really to support their organizations and their ability to provide services to the public following that Main Street approach, but really giving special attention to those who were financially impacted by COVID-19. So it was a good opportunity for those organizations who were maybe forced to cancel major fundraising events due to the pandemic, or who maybe lost funding from local municipality due to the reallocation of resources for COVID-19. Organizations could apply for these funds, and they could use it toward direct technical assistance for local small businesses. They could use it towards staff or any other operating expenses, or even promotional costs. We kept it pretty vague intentionally because we just wanted to provide some kind of overhead coverage. We also responded by pivoting our typical Downtown Development Week, which is a week-long celebration of downtowns across the state that are focused on events. And we pivoted that because, again, a few months ago, we had no idea if this fall we would be able to have events, if we'd be able to gather. So we pivoted Downtown Development Week to an initiative that supports Small Business Saturday. So we are actually partnering with SBA to promote and encourage shoppers in downtown businesses during the holiday season. Small business owners or Main Street directors, they can complete a form that we have on our website. You can submit your businesses in the downtown district. We will categorize their business, whether it's clothing, entertainment, home goods, you name it. And we're currently building a map that will allow shoppers to choose small businesses to visit based on the submissions that we get. So once we populate that map, we plan to market it, share it. So we would really appreciate if you all could share that as well and just help promote foot traffic in our small businesses. Some other responses and initiatives that I just wanted to touch on quickly. As a coordinating program, we also began having regional calls. Earlier in the pandemic, we started having weekly calls where we would bring in experts and guests to come and basically present on what opportunities and resources they had that might help our organizations through this time of COVID. But we decided to pivot and start doing regional calls where the executive directors could really become the experts and they could share what they're doing in their region, ask each other questions, and learn from each other. Overall, we've also just really increased our communications. I think I mentioned earlier, I've been in my role for about a year, and as anyone who starts a new job knows, it maybe takes about a year for you to figure out how to really do your job. And I think COVID-19 really helped to just catapult me into my position and bring what I see as my strengths being to the table. And I think part of that is communication. And so I've been trying really hard to just act as a filter for our local programs. And because again, there's so much information out there with COVID, it's overwhelming. And so I've just been trying to act as that filter, curating resources and sending them to our main streets to help them navigate this time. We also created a private Facebook group. It's the IMS COVID-19 Facebook group. And that's been really fun. It's just been a place where people can ask each other questions, where people can network and be instantly connected. We're gonna start some really fun things with that, like some Facebook takeovers and have directors share what they do in a day, and just to help people get to know each other and feel less isolated in their individual community. We've also put out some new toolkits. And even though not all these toolkits are related to COVID response directly, I think they are evergreen and they will always be helpful. So we put out a toolkit using downtown spaces to respond to COVID-19. We have an absentee property owners, a code enforcement, and a memorandum of understanding and contract for services 101 toolkits. And then soon to come, we're kind of in the final stages of review with it, but a communicating during crisis toolkit. So all these you can find on our OCRA Indiana Main Street webpage under education and training. And most of these, they have the toolkit, but then they have about like a 15-minute recorded webinar to just kind of walk you through the toolkit and how you might use it. So I encourage you to check those out. And then kind of pivoting from COVID-19, this next program that I wanted to highlight was actually not created in response to COVID-19. In fact, we had announced this program in March, I believe right before everything really shut down and COVID started impacting us here on a day-to-day basis. However, this grant was created specifically for Main Street communities to apply for as the lead applicant. And it's a grant program that's really unlike anything else that Indiana Main Street or OCRA has done in the past. So it's been really fun. And because of that, I thought it would just be worth highlighting here. So the program, we called it Preserving Women's Legacy Grants. It was a one-time grant as part of a legacy project of the Indiana Women's Suffrage Centennial. And we partnered with Indiana Humanities to offer this grant. And really the goal was to catalyze Main Streets to discover, preserve, and activate locations that tell the story of women's history in Indiana Main Street communities. And we thought, you know, not only do we get this opportunity to tell the story of amazing women, but we thought that the Main Street programs would also benefit by leading the way in this big placemaking effort and really assuring that the local elected officials and stakeholders and residents understand the impact of the organization. And what I think is really cool about this grant is that it was not just a financial grant. Yes, they did receive funds, but communities also received a workshop to build capacity for the communities. So we had experts come in and share best practices and talk through them about potential challenges they may face. We had a professional historian, placemaking experts, you name it. We also offered a capture of the funded project, which could include professional videography, capturing the project story and project development, professional photography to promote the project and the organization and media, as well as PR professionals to help with media and specialized outlets. So there's a lot more to this grant than just the grant dollars, which is very important, but I think so are those capacity building components. So we ultimately awarded 3 communities, and I just wanted to share those projects here briefly. Rediscover Downtown Peru. They were awarded $35,000 to create the Miami County Women's Suffrage Trail. The trail will begin with a life-size bronze statue of Marie Stewart Edwards as a young teen standing by her bike. The statue, as well as displays and plaques around the county, will really increase awareness of the role that local women played in the fight for suffrage. And the project is in partnership with Miami County Worth Remembering, ACES Plus, and the Daughters of the American Revolution. And then Downtown Angola Coalition, they were awarded $40,000 to commission a life-size sculpture of Sojourner Truth. In 1861, Truth gave a speech on the Steuben County Courthouse steps that supporting civil rights in the Civil War. And so the sculpture will commemorate her connection to the city of Angola, as well as serve as a reminder for significance that women and women of color had in the fight for equal rights and suffrage. The Michigan City Main Street Association, they were also awarded $40,000 to construct either a sculpture, a mosaic, or a mural. The actual piece, the art piece, will be based on community as well as artist input. They're gonna put that in the Charles R. Westcott Park to honor Naomi Bowman Talbert Anderson. So Anderson, she was born in Michigan City in 1843 to free African-American parents and became a significant suffragist, civil rights activist, writer, and a poet. And so the artwork will have a narrative format for all ages, and a companion to that will be the creation of an archived collection of biographical information about Anderson. So we are really proud of these projects. All of them have partnered with different organizations within their community to make it happen. We have a really cool about 10-minute video announcing the grantees of this award. So I definitely encourage you to check it out. You can probably Google it and find it. And then before I wrap up, I did want to just plug the Historic Renovation Grant Program because I know my audience and you guys are preservation people, and I think you'll find this interesting if you don't already know about it. So this program, really the purpose of it is to preserve and rehabilitate historic properties in order to further incentivize downtown economic development. The lead applicant can be an individual, a firm, an association. It can also be a nonprofit corporation if that's where they're going to use, if that's the space that they'll use to conduct its purposes and functions. Properties owned by local units of government are not eligible for that program, and eligible activities are limited to the exterior work and must include measures to sustain the form, integrity, and material of a building or structure. But you can request between $5,000 and $100,000. The grant requires a 1-to-1 match, and really to be eligible, it just has to be located in Indiana, be at least 50 years old, be listed or eligible for listing at the time of application in the Indiana Register of Historic Sites and Structures. It needs to be actively used in trade or business, held for the production of income, or like I said, be used by a nonprofit. So just plugging that real quick, we typically open that grant in July, so keep an eye out for that. I know we're running short on time, but again, I'll send you this. Here are our grantees from this past year. You can always check this out on our website as well, but we were able to award quite a few very interesting and worthy projects. I will just skip over to the questions, and I will plug, if you want to keep up to date on OCRA related news and happenings, please go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. That's usually the best way to keep in touch with kind of big announcements. So if you're interested in grants or any news coming from Indiana Main Street, I would just encourage you to go to the OCRA website there. So with that, I'm happy to take questions. There's a lot of information, and I know we only have a few minutes, Jeannie.
All right, so we can do this. All right, when a Main Street offers downtown dollars, how do they fund this? And does it conflict with the chamber if the chamber has chamber bucks programs?
That's a good question. And unfortunately, that's a very local question because I'm not exactly sure how the local Main Street organizations set up that particular promotion. But something we hear a lot about is kind of overlap between Main Streets and chambers. And, I think in this particular community, I don't know if their chamber was also doing a similar initiative. My guess is they were not, and that's why they thought to do this. So if your chamber were to be offering a similar type of program or special, that kind of thing, my recommendation would be to work with them, talk with them, say, what are you guys doing? What can we do to complement that? And the funding, that can come from a variety of sources, and maybe that they have a line item in the budget of local municipality and they're using funds from that. They maybe got a donation or got a grant from the community foundation. I'm not quite sure where they got the specific money for it, but that usually occurs at the local level.
Do you have listed on your website all of the designated communities?
We do, yes. We actually have a really cool map, Kelly, in our office. It took her a while, but she made a map so you can scroll through the state if you want to look in a certain region. But yeah, that is on the OCRA website and the Indiana Main Street page in particular.
Okay. And then from one of our former division directors here at DHPA, he would like to know if you can share your PowerPoint because he thinks it will be useful at his local level. So is it something that maybe you can send to us and then we'll send that out to all the people who've registered?
Absolutely. Yep. I will send it as soon as we log off here today.
Just a couple more minutes. There's any more questions. Again, this is being recorded. We'll send out the link when it becomes live. Jessica has been in the background popping up some URLs on some of the different programs, your training program, the grant program, the historic renovation grant program. So we'll send those links also. If you've not attended one of these before, in a couple of days, whenever we get our stuff together and we get all the links together, we'll send out to everybody who's registered these links. We can do also the PowerPoint, also links for the next session, so you can get those that way also. Last call on questions. All right, well, Jackie, thank you so much for sharing this with us, and we're excited. And maybe after your November release and stuff like that, something next year, we can do another one of these to talk about more updates and sharing more information and changes. Oh, we got one question that just popped up. Oh, thank you from John Charles Smith. He said you did an excellent job. So thank you, John. We miss you here at the office. So I want to thank everyone for attending, and we will see you in October remember, it's an evening program in October the 29th for Century of Progress Homes tours. Again, an evening program instead of a lunch program. So thanks everyone, and we'll talk to y'all later. See you later.
Thank you.